almost a year. And therefore, it's been a very difficult time and a hard recovery process. But suffice to say that we are seeing tremendous amount of green shoots in India. The last weekend has seen a high of 380,000 travelers per day. Pre-COVID high that India has experienced has been 420,000. So we are only 10% below the pre-COVID high. So 90% of our traffic has recovered. One. Two, if you look at seat load factor in planes, which is the key barometer of health in this industry, and you need a minimum 70 to 75% seat load factor on trains, on planes. In the civil aviation sector today, we have close to about 80 to 85% seat load factor, which means that we are on our way to recovery. But I think it's still important to be cautious. It's still important for us to take this opportunity to look at structural reform in this industry and in this sector. And the last 50 to 60 days, ever since I've taken over, that's where I've spent most of my time. Understanding the pain points of all the stakeholders within this industry. And mind you, what appears at first brush to be the important sectors within this industry, mainly airlines and airports, there's much more to this sector. Very much like auto, there is an ecosystem here. And India today is in a position, a ripe position to ensure the flourishing of the aero ecosystem in India as well. And that comprises of much more than airlines, much more than airports. There is the area of MRO, there's the area of cargo, flying training organizations, ground handlers, regional airlines, helicopters, aircraft manufacturing. And so my mandate is not only as civil aviation minister to look into the growth of airlines and airports, but also across the board, the whole ecosystem, which is what I'm concentrating on.
It's interesting that you refer to all these other sectors, and we'll come to that in just a few moments, but how do you sustain demand, especially from passengers, when you always have the fear of a third wave looming somewhere in the background? Now, have you learned, obviously, lessons from the two previous waves in trying to minimize disruptions? And if so, what are some of these?
These events are beyond disruptions. They're cataclysmic events, which have the capacity to destroy industries, right? They are in legal parlance, which one would almost call force majeure events. When these sort of events happen, and they probably happen once in a century, that whole sector gets shut down. For me, what is most important is to ensure that the resurgence that has happened is something that is a continuum. Yeah. And for that, I have to look at both demand side factors and supply side factors, with my background as an economist. On the demand side, I have to make sure that I look at access, inclusivity, affordability. And that can only be done, on the one hand, through higher penetration. And this sector is very akin to the revolution that we saw in the telecom sector in the 90s. And if you all remember that there was a time when we had none of these mobile phones in India, and analog nor digital.
True.
And you initially had 5 main metros that went out on a bidding system. And that was a very low volume, low margin, high cost game. And today, telecom has transformed itself into a high volume, low margin, low cost game. The similar change is happening in civil aviation, where through very high penetration levels, high capacity expansion, you're actually seeing a high volume, low margin game play out. So for me, penetration is important, which is why I have to look at greater accessibility through the UDAN program, which is the Prime Minister's prerogative through Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagrik. His thought and his mission and his vision, which was ki Hawai Chappal wala bhi Hawai Jahaz se safar kare. And that has been made possible through UDAN. And there are some amazing stories within that envelope. The fact that you have airstrips now in small tier 2 cities like Darbhanga, Jharsuguda in Orissa, which post-World War II had been wiped off the aviation map. And today they have a very healthy demand of over 2 lakh travelers per month. Great connectivity, all because of UDAN through VGF, Viability Gap Funding. Then you also have to look at the last mile solution, which is not only your Code C aircraft, your Boeings and your Airbuses, but your regional aircraft, your helicopters. So for example, we have a very low penetration per capita penetration rate of helicopters in India. We only have a fleet of 280 helicopters in India. Now that is a huge impetus for the hilly regions, northeast regions, and therefore I've come out with a new helicopter policy, which has really democratized helicopter travel for the masses. Wiping off parking charges, landing charges, going online onto the HeliSeva portal, making sure that we have a helicopter accelerator cell within the ministry, and therefore promoting this last mile connectivity. So one is to look at demand side factors. The second is to really look at supply side factors, where you look at increasing the scope of airports. And let me put a data point out there for you, which shocked me. And I wasn't aware of this until I took over as Civil Aviation Minister. In 70 years in India, we have built 74 airports from 1947 till 2014. From 2014 till date, under the Prime Ministership of Modi ji, we have built 62 airports. So 74 airports in 70 years and 62 airports in 7 years. So we've gone from 74 airports to 136. And the journey doesn't stop here. By 2024-25, we will have built airports and heliports together, a sum of 220 heliports and airports together. That's the penetration that we seek to create. And we need to move away from the glitz and glamour of a Bombay and a Delhi and a Bangalore and a Chennai. And we need to move to 2 and tier 3 cities, because that's where you're going to get the greatest demand, greatest connectivity from. And just to give you a perspective of where we are going in civil aviation. Civil aviation traditionally has always been known as an elitist form of travel.
True.
In the last 7 years, नागर विमानन क्षेत्र का लोकतांत्रिकरण हो चुका है, प्रजातंत्रीकरण हो चुका है. The democratization of travel through air has happened. And why do I say that? Today, if you look at rail services which are beyond 6 to 8 hours, the price of ticket on a second AC rail fare, which is your nearest comparative to air, is 10 to 20% higher than flying by air. And on the other hand, second class AC rail and above, first class and so on and so forth, you have 181 million passengers traveling by rail. Conversely, you have 141 million people traveling by air. Now here comes the trigger. The CAGR, the compounded annual growth rate for rail travel, is only 5.3%. The CAGR for air is 10.4%. So in a period of the next 3 years, you're going to have many more people traveling by air than by second class AC and above on rail. But that's the revolution that's going to happen in India.
Well, that's good to know, but obviously a lot will depend on airfare levels. Now, you did say that the Prime Minister wanted people with Hawai Chappal to fly in a Hawai Jahaz. So I want to ask you, because are they really falling, the airfares? Because in the month of August, the Civil Aviation Ministry increased the cap on minimum and maximum airfare levels by 12.5%. During Diwali, prices have gone up again. And you know, one did travel and one did find that there was quite a disparity between now and what was there before.
So, trust an interviewer to pick up those data points. But like always, I think it's important not to be selective, but to look at the landscape. Now, let me give you that landscape. In the civil aviation sector, and many of you come from industry, can you think of another industry where a single raw material comprises of close to 40% of your cost structure? And in this case, 40% of your revenue structure, because all airlines are making losses. So your cost structure is your revenue structure. ATF, air turbine fuel, is 37.9% to be exact of an airline's cost structure and similarly of its revenue structure. Now look at what has happened to ATF prices. ATF prices over the last 8 months, oil prices have gone from $22 a barrel to $84 to $85 a barrel. So airline cost structure has gone up by 4x. Add to that excise duty and VAT, 11% excise duty, and states charge VAT ranging from 1 to 2% to 30%. How is an airline going to survive unless it becomes economical? Even that being the case, let me give it to you in writing. And the reason why I raised the airfare bands is because you have to give some level of cushion. When you have a 4x increase, a 400% increase on the raw material side, if you're not able to give a 12.5% increase on the revenue side, then you and I won't have an airline to board tomorrow. So I think it's important not to look at a data point at a particular period of time, but look at it in context of the raw material pricing, number one, and number two, in the context of a continuum. And today, my bet is that airline prices are one of the lowest in the world. If you look at it over the past, take out the COVID period, but pre-COVID period, in terms of a mode of travel compared to any of our neighborhood areas. Now, linchpin of bringing about economic development in nations across the world. And so will be the case with India.
Mr. Scindia, two quick ones. One, of course, who are the states that are still sort of standing on formality and not sort of boarding the VAT bus? And also Air India, the Maharaja will finally be going back to where it belonged, to the Tatas. At what stage is this transfer process right now?
So to answer your first question, let me say this, that all the states that I've had a conversation with, and out of the 22 states that chief ministers that I've written, 6 have already issued, and when I'm saying this on record with you, this is not a verbal confirmation from you to me. Cabinet meetings have been held. Cabinet has passed that reduction of VAT. The notification has been issued, and the notification has been sent to my ministry. So 6 states in last 40 days, through our efforts and through their cooperation, have already come on board. The total of our 36 states that we're looking at, 10 to 11 have been very forward-looking and historically have had very low VAT rates between 1 to 4%. So those 11 were already on this side of the equation. These 6 have already come on this side. So we have now 17 on this side, and we have another 18 or 19 to work with. Of the 18 or 19, I've already got affirmations and confirmations from 3 more. But I'm not going to name them until I get them in my basket.
Are they opposition or the BJP ruled?
I don't think on this issue it is an opposition or BJP rule, because on this issue it is economic growth, connectivity, employment for every state. And I don't think everything must be seen through a partisan lens.
I'm just hunting for a headline.
Yeah. But every
you can't grudge me that.
Yeah. So for every state it is their economic development. And I must say on this issue I've had great cooperation from whether government rule states or opposition rule states or vice versa. To answer your second question,
on the Maharaja,
this has been a landmark transaction. It's been a transaction and an event, let me say more than a transaction, an event that has been in pregnancy for over 15 or 18 years. It's an event that will herald landmark changes in the aviation sector. It is an event that is a win-win for every stakeholder, whether it be our country, whether it be government, whether it be the private sector, whether it be the end consumer.
Even the employees?
And even the employees
so
at the end of the day.
That, but the timelines, where are we right now?
So I'm just coming to that. Yeah. At this point of time, the shareholders agreement has been signed. Conditions precedent is the next stage. We are closing on those conditions precedent, and we have put a date of somewhere, if I'm not wrong, mid-Jan or third week of Jan as the outlier for complete transfer of operations to the new party. I wish them well. I believe that they will certainly bring about a value proposition for our end customer. And I also believe that competition in the airline civil aviation space is extremely important. It's important for me to ensure that we have a minimum of 4 to 5 players in this market so that customers have a choice. And on that note, let me tell you, this is the first time in probably the last 2 decades, where you see an era in civil aviation where, as opposed to airlines being weeded out and closing down, you're actually going to see next year the birth of 2 new airlines. You're going to have a reborn avatar of Jet Airways, and you're going to see Akasa come into the fold, along with a new christened Air India. So I look forward to a greater value proposition for my customers, greater service delivery to my customers. And as far as the Air India transaction handing over, I'm looking at the third week of January.
Well, that's a big headline. It's a reassuring one. The press release that was issued during the conclusion of the deal says the interests of employees will be taken care of. Now, how exactly? And also, on the question of the price, 18,000 crores, since it has so much of assets, do you think it's the right price?
You know, we have a habit always in our country, and it's a good habit, but we have a habit constantly of whataboutery. What if? I think we need to transition from the whataboutery and what if to a what is. The fact that this is an event that has happened and it's a landmark historic event, I think is something that all of us as a country, irrespective of the politics that we believe in and the thought processes that we believe in, were waiting to happen. There's a reserve price that was declared, which was close to about 12,900 crores. Both bids that came in were above that reserve price. One bid, if I'm not mistaken, close to about 15,000 crores, and the winning bid close to about 18,000 crores. When there has been a reserve price valuation that is done, please understand that the process that we followed, with the reserve price tabulation process, only took place after the financial bids had come in to ensure complete transparency. Those financial bids were not opened until the reserve price was tabulated. So it was a completely independent third-party transaction.
So there is no question of
And
Modi cronies, gravely compromising India's financial security, selling PSBs to Modi cronies. This is what Rahul Gandhi said, and he also said that we're not against privatization. Our privatization had a logic, and there was no privatization of strategic industries such as railways. All this privatization is for creating monopolies. They're selling our crown jewels.
You know, I just love the way the Congress changes its colors depending on whether it's in government or in opposition. The same Congress party, which I was a part of, was the one that spearheaded the privatization program, and in their tenure during the UPA did 99,000 crores worth of privatization. And today here they are talking a different color. So the question I have to ask to our audience here, a company that was incurring losses of 20 crores a day, and I don't want to get into the raison d'etre for the reason of those losses and the rationale for those losses in terms of the policy steps that were taken during the past government's tenure.
And because you were part of, obviously,
close to Rahul, I think you've known me long enough.
Yeah.
I have always called a spade a spade. And on this dais and on many other daises, I've always maintained in life that what is right and what is wrong. And I have, even when I was within the Congress party, certain actions that were taken, which I did not agree with, I made sure that I have to live up to my own conscience and my inner calling. At the end of the day, I have to answer myself as a human being. And so therefore, a company that was incurring a loss of close to 7,500 crores a year, for 5 years, GOI, which means not some third party standing out there, but all of you were funding that loss through your income tax that you were paying, close to almost 52,000 crores being an equity infusion into that company, close to another 53,000 crores of government guarantees being given to a company, close to another 56,000 crores of debt being given to that company. Now you tell me, should you and I be using that money, which is our resource as a country, for more socially productive uses which entail greater return on human capital, or should we be using it to fund a carrier close to 150,000 crores just to say that we are funding the losses and it's still ours? At the end of the day, we have to do what is correct for our country. And I'm glad that under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi, we are taking the right moral decision to do what is right for 130 crore Indians, and we have the courage to be able to do that.
Let's talk a little bit about worker interests. You said it's going to be a win-win also for the workers. Now, how is that exactly going to be?
So what's really important in any endeavor is to make sure that we take all family members along. And this has been our aim, even with this journey that we have embarked on. Air India and Air India Express together have close to about 13 to 14,000 employees. And one of the things that we did spend a lot of time on is to ensure that we have some sort of safety net in place. So for example, everyone's jobs are insured for a minimum period of 1 year. Post that 1 year, if retrenchment has to happen, it can only happen through a VRS. Health benefits that employees today enjoy will continually be given to them. The pension funds and the pension that is secured will be transferred to EPFO, and Government of India takes charge of that. Justice Dharamadhikari had passed a judgment in terms of benefits to be given to employees close to about 1,322 crores, if I'm not wrong. That is going to be complied with by Government of India. And so therefore, all of those issues have been taken care of by us. There are residential colonies where our employees stay. We have ensured that for a minimum period of 6 months, those will stay on an as-is basis. Post that, everyone will have to find other places to stay, and naturally so. as far as the brand is concerned, which is also another important thing, the Air India brand will remain with the current buyer for a minimum of 5 years. Post that, even if it is parted with, it must only go into an Indian entity. This organization will have to be run as a running concern for a minimum of 3 years. So all those stipulations are there as part of the SPA, the Shareholders Purchase Agreement.